bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Vance, also known as Ricky Vance, and a great episode for you today. Another great conversation with another guest going against the grain. Zach from RedPill78. It was a very, very popular YouTube channel. He recently got censored off YouTube, had everything deleted, years of hard work, years of producing and editing and putting out content and videos. And now they're really forcing our hand for people to look for alternatives. And I think more alternatives are popping up, and hopefully soon enough we'll find one that we can all agree on moving to and all using and becomes compatible with Androids and iPhones and laptops and whatever else we use to watch content. But for now, he does have a brand new awesome looking website called RedPill78news.com. That's red pill, then a number 78, and then news.com. Check out that website. He has merch, his podcast links, videos, news. You can contact him, all that stuff. So definitely check that out. We have a Union of the Unwanted coming right around the corner, November 2nd, the day before the election, 7 p.m. We'll be live on my YouTube channel as long as YouTube still hasn't kicked me off yet. It'll be at RV36 or just search Ripple Effect Podcast. You can find my YouTube channel. Also, if you want to support the show, in the show description, I always have links to my Patreon page. If you do support me on Patreon, which a lot of people have of late, and it doesn't mean that I have a lot of Patreon supporters, but it just means more people have been jumping in and supporting the show financially than they have in the past. So it seems like this show is starting to get a little bit of traction, and people are really believing in what I'm attempting to do and wanting to help support it. I keep saying that it's a value for value system. If you get value out of the show, out of these conversations, out of me helping just bring interesting ideas, conversations, people, researchers to you, then try to give me some type of value in return in regards to not just necessarily financially, but rate the show, review the show, tell your friends about the show, share the show, do all that type of stuff. Anything helps. And I know with the future being uncertain, there's plenty of other ways without financially helping that you can help support the show. So those are just a few methods. But if you do want to help to support the show financially, Patreon, if you're not familiar with it, you can give $1, $2, $5 a month. And if you do, I truly appreciate that. Helps pay for bandwidth, equipment, all the hosting needs and all the things and expenses that go into hosting a podcast. And I also have a PayPal account. If you want to tip the show, you'll find those links on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com, and it's also in the show description on our YouTube channel episodes. And we also have a merch store, another great way of supporting the show, therippleeffectpodcastmerch.com. Go there, buy some hoodies, buy some shirts, whatever you can. I mean, we all need clothes, so it's a great way of getting some stuff you need and also supporting the show. So there's plenty of ways to support the show. Hopefully one of these will work for you. I'll just thank you in advance for anybody who has and does support the show. Remember, if you want to follow me on Instagram, RV36, Twitter, RV36. I'm also on Parler, RV36, which is also our YouTube channel name, RV36, or just search Ripple Effect Podcast. I have a Ripple Effect Podcast Facebook page. You can like us there. You can also hit me up directly. You can look for my personal Facebook page. Just let me know you're a fan of the show, and I have no problem connecting with you. And I think that's officially it. Hopefully everybody's had a great week and weekend whenever the hell you're listening to this, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace. Good to go. Well,
all right.
Since you got kicked off of YouTube, how's have a lot of your fans followed you over to the other platforms?
Not as many as I would hope. They deleted me off YouTube, and then very quickly they deleted me off of Twitter. So I lost a very easy way to contact everybody. There was, I have no idea, maybe like 25,000 have found me over there on these other platforms. But you know, they're not as reliable as YouTube. You know, as much as I like to complain about YouTube not sending out notifications, I mean, it was still a very convenient place, and people knew how to find me there very easily. So I'm having more people come to the live streams than I am like my live streams. You know, still got like, you know, 4,000 plus people there every time that I go live. But just like the regular videos, it seems like the notification process is inconsistent. Rumble, this is crazy. When you go to search for me, like on the Rumble app on Roku, you go REDP, and then as soon as you press I, it completely shuts down the app. You can't search for me. You can't search for me. You can't search for X22. You can't search for Project Veritas. I don't know if it's Rumble that's blocking it. I don't know if it's, you know, Roku, if it's, you know, something deeper like in Android, because I mean, all that stuff is on the Android TV operating system. So I don't know what the deal is, but it's very strange that, that you can't get to me unless you have the specific link to get there directly. But I've got a website that I've had people building for me. That should be ready tomorrow. And as soon as it is, then I'm going to, you know, announce that. Then people can just go right to the website. My videos will be embedded there, and it should be a lot easier to manage.
Yeah, that's what people like Corbett did for a long time. And, you know, some now Last American Vagabond, they also got deplatformed. Have you looked into Rockfin at all? I know I've talked about him a little bit on the show because so Sam Tripoli has a spiritual podcast he calls Zero, and he has it on Rockfin. So he's kind of established a relationship with them, and then they talked to Sam about recruiting some people. So he went to me and a couple other podcasters he's friends with, and I got to talk to some of the people who actually work there and got to know the company, and they're super cool, and they seem like they're trying to capitalize on the niche of all these people who are getting kicked off other platforms. And
Really?
I think initially that wasn't the case. I think they were just looking to recruit people, and it just happened that because they seem to have like basically no, they're not into censoring people at all, at least for the time being. And I'm always a little worried about like, okay, that's your niche now, like getting people in the alternative media world, but once you're making serious money and you have marketers, people who want to put commercials, sponsorships, all this stuff, and they want to have some say. I wonder if that changes, but I want to believe it's not going to. The CEO seems really cool. The people who work for the company that I've talked to seem really cool, and people like Ryan from the Last American Vagabond has a show on there. They have a channel, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Jason Burmis. So they seem like they're getting a lot of those people, and I want my show to be out everywhere, as you know. I really want to just kind of spread these conversations as far as I can, so I don't want to have anything behind a paywall. But you can put your content free or premium, and the way it works is that if you pay whatever it is, $5 or $10 a month, you get basically a subscription to their website, and you get access to everybody's stuff. So the idea is we all kind of help each other, you know, like people will go there to go, you know, they want to see Jimmy Dore, but then they'll get exposed to maybe my stuff or your stuff or whatever. So I like the idea. I think it's always hard to get people to pay for stuff when you can get it for free. You know, it's, you know, like the No Agenda show talks about, and so many other shows talk about how, you know, 0.001% of people are going to actually financially contribute to your show. So I know that gets hard, but maybe when you're talking about a monthly thing and a monthly payment, but you get access not just to one show, but you get access to all these shows, then, you know, as a group, you know, as a tribe, maybe it's easier to get people to kind of contribute. And I think, like when Ben Swan was on my show, he talked about how they overplayed their hand in regards to all the censorship and all this stuff. And I think that's kind of true. I think that, you know, I had Mickey Willis on recently from the Plandemic documentary, and how many people are much more skeptical of Bill Gates, much more skeptical of Big Pharma and the vaccine agenda. Like so many people who were going on with their everyday lives, didn't really care about these issues at all. Now that these issues have come home and it's affecting their loved ones, their kids, their ability to be free and just experience life and live life, I think people are becoming much more aware of these things. So I think also because the censorship has become so blatantly obvious, you know, that people are just like, you know what, maybe it is convenient to use YouTube because they have apps on every platform and it works flawlessly and it's easy. But now nothing I enjoy is on there.
Yeah.
And it kind of opens the door for these other alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think that they have overplayed their hand. And I think that, you know, hopefully in the end, what they're going to end up doing is pushing all of these people off, because now there's nothing that I want to watch on YouTube either. Everybody that I know has been deleted at this point. You know, there's maybe one or two that are on there, but it's not enough to make me, you know, rush to the app like I would have previously. You know, like anytime I had downtime, you know, if I had somebody that I wanted to watch, I would go look on YouTube. Now, you know, I mean, I'm really finding I don't have much time at all to watch anybody, because I'm struggling to get everything uploaded onto these, you know, like 10 different platforms. You know, when I'm streaming to like 4 or 5 different places. Streaming is not as difficult as uploading to several different places. You know, like I think honestly, my favorite in terms of ease of use has been Library or Odyssey. It's quick, you know, I mean, it's got a smooth interface. It works really well. But, you know, Rumble is like Dan Bongino owns a portion of Rumble. And so he's pushing Rumble a lot. So that's kind of free advertising. But obviously it seems like they're censoring me over there as well. I don't really get it. And even the videos that I have gotten on there, like they have this system for showing like the top videos. It's like you hit the Rumble, it's like a like. And, you know, I'll look at the top videos of the day, and my videos will have like more rumbles than like, you know, the like the top 7 videos, like the top 3. Okay, I have more than me, but then like I'm ahead of everybody else and I've got more views, but my videos aren't showing up. I don't know what the formula is over there. And then on Cloud Hub, that's the other one that I'm uploading on. They're new, but they are going to have a Roku app soon that's going to allow people to watch it on their TV and have it be convenient. But you know, I mean, I also have like a pay station, you know, that's also through Roku. It's like RedPill78.tv, and I'm trying to do a couple of shows a week for that. But I mean, I'm already saddled with, you know, daily shows and then streams 5 days a week. So at this point, it's like, where am I going to find the time to make any additional shows and put them on any additional platforms if it's not what I'm already publishing someplace else, you know? I mean, it might be different if I had somebody else editing for me or doing anything, but I mean, I'm doing everything myself. I'm sure, you know, you're much the same, you know?
Isn't that like a balance? I mean, the thing is, like, I'm the same way. Like, I want to be able to put out a bunch of shows, but I don't want to put out so many shows that I'm just putting out content and not quality, you know?
Yeah.
Like, when do you have time to like research or even digest what you research? Because sometimes you have time to research, but you don't really have time to ponder on what it means or connect the dots or whatever. So it is this thing where it's just like, but we live in a world where the more the better. Like people will just go to the next channel that's putting up more stuff because of the fact that they're just putting out more stuff. So they you know, they see the name, they're getting the notifications. So people have short attention spans. I remember years ago when I started my podcast, I think late 2013, there's this guy that I became friends with. His name was Guy Evans, and he had a podcast, and he actually interviewed some awesome people. Like he had the daughter of Edward Bernays on his show. He had Noam Chomsky. Was it a granddaughter or the daughter? No, maybe it was the daughter. And he had like Noam Chomsky on, and he, you know, he had some, and it was a good show. And then his show wasn't growing to the extent that he wanted to. So what he did, he wanted to start doing them daily, podcast daily, even if it was just a little snip, a little whatever. And at that time, you know, this was probably like 2014, 2015. And there wasn't, you know, podcasts didn't really blow up yet. And just the growth, the rate of growth when he started doing daily podcasts, even though a lot of them were just like little, just opinion pieces on what was going on or whatever, nothing that was like real serious research or anything really deep, but the growth blew up. And it was because people were just getting those notifications. It was just new stuff all the time. And people's attention spans are so low, you know, so low that it's like, if you're not constantly reminding them that you exist, then they go somewhere else. And that's the thing about YouTube too. You know, do you put your podcasts or your shows out in podcast form on an RSS feed?
Yes, I do. Yeah, yeah. I publish through Megaphone. So it goes to Apple, I guess Android podcasts, Spotify. It was going to Stitcher until a couple of days ago. Media Matters did a hit piece on me, and that was part of why I got deleted on YouTube. Then that's why I got deleted off of Twitter, and then that's why I got deleted off of Stitcher. Just a 1, 2, 3. So yeah, I mean, it's not a tremendous number of people that download the audio podcast, but yeah, I was really surprised. I mean, like so many people said they wanted to, and I don't know if it's that people can't find it, or I mean, maybe I'm not advertising it enough.
Well, I think a little bit too is like sometimes you think like Jason Burmis, for example. I'm always telling him to go on create a RSS feed, put this stuff out as audio, because there are people who are gonna. There's also seems to be less restrictions. Like of late, I've been having issues with the Mickey Willis episode not showing up on iTunes, and last time I had that issue was one of the Del Bigtree appearances on the show, but. Besides iTunes and just a couple shows, I basically have had like no issues in regards to people not accessing the shows. I mean, maybe it's shadow banned in regards to like, you're not getting suggested the podcasts, and they're not really pushing it on the people who aren't aware of it. But if you're aware of it and you can, you can subscribe to it on whatever podcast app you use, for the most part, people get the shows when they come out. So it seems like we have a little bit more freedom in that aspect of it. I use YouTube as like, okay, it's one more spot where I could put it out there. Hopefully somebody runs into it. But the majority of people who listen to my show, they download it and then they listen to it. So, I've never really been, YouTube. Plus I don't focus too much on the visual part of it. I remember when I started my podcast, a lot of people I remember having to call people's house phones. Jesse Ventura, when I had him on, he wanted me to use a landline. I'm like, sure, why not? So there wasn't like any video to kind of go along with it. I would upload it just kind of as audio. But I figure, yeah, the more platforms, the better. But it does sound like it gets annoying. Like I've been meaning to put my videos at least somewhere else, but then I'm like, where the hell am I going to put it? I'm like, I have 260 something or 270 something episodes to spend all that time uploading all that stuff, and then find out that like that's not the platform we choose to be the next big one. It's like that's a lot of freaking work, So it is one of those things where I'm kind of waiting to see what becomes the next alternative, and then invest all my time and effort in that. Have you looked into IPFS and that type of thing? That's kind of what James Corbett and Ernest Hancock has done with all James Corbett's stuff, just like this peer-to-peer kind of, you can't get rid of it once it's backed up on IPF. Honestly, I wish I could explain it better, but I really don't even know how it works. But I know it is a way of like kind of bypassing censorship.
I mean, I've just vaguely heard about it. I don't know anything about it specifically. But what happens if you want to delete something? I mean, do you have the ability to delete it, or is it like once it's up there, it's there for good? Like, what's that one? Oh gosh, there was some blogging platform a couple of years ago that came out on blockchain, and Steam It. If you publish something on Steam It, you can never delete it. Like it's always there. And, I mean, that could be problematic, in the future, if it turns out that maybe there's something you just don't want to have online anymore. But no, I don't know anything about IPFS, and, everything that I'm doing now that I've been deleted from YouTube is like so preliminary. Like I had to like rush over the course of a weekend basically and decide, okay, what's my game plan? How am I going to get this out to people? Immediately I figured, okay, I can do these ones. I got approached by CloutHub because they've got some money behind them, and they're about to do some type of marketing push. And, and there was a bunch of other people that got deleted too. And so we all kind of just, I guess did our own things. But many people are going to CloutHub. Dave from X22 Report went to CloutHub. He was in a great spot because he's been collecting hundreds of thousands of emails over the course of the last, 10 years or so. So he just sent a notification out by email to all of his, his email list, and tons of people followed him over there, so he's getting 100,000 views a day over there still. Wow. And yeah, it's insane. Like my first video, I got, like 22,000 views, which is, maybe like a quarter of what I was used to getting over on YouTube. And ever since then, I mean, it's maybe 10 to 15,000 views per video, so I mean, clearly not everybody knows. Every single day I'm getting emails from people And they're like, what happened to you? I went to look for you on YouTube and you're all gone. I was talking with somebody the other day, Brendan Dilley, because he's been deleted like 7 times off of, a various number of platforms. And he said, this is how it's going to work. For like the first 2 weeks, everybody will finally realize that they're not getting your notifications. And then they'll go and look for your channel. And then they'll realize they can't find your channel. And then maybe a week or so later, then they'll, start trying to look for you to see if they can find you any place, or they'll go to your Twitter, but your Twitter's deleted, so they can't find that. And then they start realizing, oh, shoot, I didn't write down any of that backup information back when you were on YouTube. And then finally, gradually over the course of several months, word will get out and people will start realizing where you're at. And then once they realize, it'll be atmospheric once again. People will start catching on. But once this website is up, I mean, that's going to be huge, because then I can just say RedPill78news.com and everybody can just go there. It's got an embed of one of the streams. And if you don't want to go to that stream, you can go to any of the other ones. It'll have embeds of all of my videos, since I got deleted. I'll have a blog, I'll have, so many various links of different places that you can go if you don't want to just go to the website. And it'll just be a single repository. Because right now my signature on my emails is like this long, trying to fit everything into it. But yeah, I don't know. In the meantime, things are rough right now.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, I think when one door closes, another one opens. And I definitely think this is a perfect opportunity for one of these platforms to really blossom. I know, talking to Midnight Mike from the OBDM show, he always says like, oh, this platform's good, but they have issues with streaming, or this platform's good, but they have issues with this. So it does seem like when we discuss these things with them, that there isn't a perfect option right now, but but there's a lot of really smart people out there, and some of them are really sick of this censorship. I mean, it's I don't know if you saw any of the hearings today. I mean, it's just ridiculous that they still pretend that like there's no biasness, like that they're just everything's done. It's so silly that the fact that Twitter deleted your Twitter account but still has porn on Twitter, still has some child porn accounts, okay, which were exposed by I forget what her name, Chrissy, I forget what her name, but she tweeted actually a bunch of them. She's like, why are these still up? Why? And then there's people in the comments or tweeting that tweet saying, commenting on that tweet saying, I already reported this. I don't know why it's up. I reported this. I reported that. And it's like, so if everybody's reporting this, who the fuck are you protecting? Like, you're not protecting anybody. What you're doing is you're deciding what truth is for the rest of us. And when they control the information, and our opinions and perspectives are only as good as the information we have access to, then they control our perspectives and opinions. I mean, so it's that simple. Like, this is why it's so dangerous. And people who don't see this, they don't care, because it's not their, it's not perspectives or people they agree with that are being censored for the most part right now. But one day it will be, and then they'll realize how big of an issue it is. And we shouldn't wait till that happens. I mean, there's plenty of people I don't agree with that I think absolutely they should have a voice. Like, you fight bad ideas with good ideas. You don't just make it disappear. And a lot of times it becomes a forbidden fruit, where it's like, wait, why is this person being censored? And it brings even more attention to them. So it's like, if you really want to expose a bad idea, have the debate, talk about it, conversate about it. What they're doing is absolutely ridiculous. And it couldn't be more obvious that people who write algorithms, people who are CEOs of these big tech companies, this idea that they don't have personal beliefs, they don't have personal opinions, and some of that's not going to factor into some of their policies or factor into some of their algorithms. I mean, it's insanity.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty obvious. It's more than overt at this point. And I did catch some of the testimony. I reported on a little bit of it today. I thought that it was incredibly ironic that they were trying to make the argument that if Section 230 is repealed, or if it's adjusted in some way, that it's going to have a negative effect on free speech on the internet. I mean, all of these tech giant companies, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or just Google as a whole, I mean, they are all deciding what is okay to put on their platform. What is sanctioned speech, what is wrong think, what they're not going to allow you to investigate and to research. And I mean, they've already stifled free speech on the internet. Every one of these platforms have just come so far from where they were when they began. And it's very clear that all of them are doing it in the same direction. I'm conservative. Okay, I support the president, and I don't have a problem with anybody who doesn't support the president. I mean, like you said, I want to have a dialogue. I want to be able to have a conversation, and maybe we can change each other's minds, or maybe we can still go get a bite to eat afterwards, and have a conversation about something else. It doesn't have to be politics, but I mean, they're only subjecting conservative voices at this point, or people who are questioning the official scientific narrative. I mean, like, there are plenty of anti-vaxxers out there who are not necessarily supporters of President Trump. They just don't want to have vaccines. They don't want to have mandated vaccines. But they just won't allow you to talk about any of it. I mean, it's very, very clear that there's a scientific and there is a political agenda, and that these are the only things that you're allowed to talk about if you're going to discuss it like this. And you've got companies like Media Matters that just wrote that piece on me. And, the whole thing is slander. They go to these big companies and they say, well, these podcasters are promoting violence. Never. I've never promoted violence. I've never said that anyone should, be subjected to mob rule. I've never said that people should be dragged out into the street and hung for crimes that they've committed. I mean, if somebody has broken the law, I want equal application of justice under the law. I want somebody to be, the exact same treatment for two different people. If they are rich or poor, they've committed a crime, they go to court, and, they get to plead their case. And if they're guilty, then they get the punishment, and that doesn't matter if it's for, stealing a kid's bicycle, or if it's treason against the United States of America. They're both crimes, and you both deserve to have your day in court. But they try to frame it in such a way to make it look like, by saying that people deserve to get justice for whatever it is that they've done, by saying that, or by simply bringing up the fact that people have betrayed the country, or they've done things against President Trump and against the citizens of this country, trying to manipulate the system, trying to remove him from office, trying to tell me what his agenda and policies are, even though I know that what they're saying is totally incorrect. If you are somebody who stands in defiance of that, then you're not allowed to stay on the internet. You're not allowed to have a platform on these major platforms that have been built up over all these years under the idea that you are a small person with a loud voice able to broadcast to people who have like-minded ideals. It's coming down now to where the only thing that's going to be on YouTube is going to be, late night television show hosts, sports clips, cat videos, and, maybe, babies on the floor or something like that. Or they've still got some pretty nasty stuff up on YouTube too. You can kill an animal and eat it on camera. Mukbang, that stuff, and they're totally fine with it. It's disgusting to me. I wouldn't watch it, but I wouldn't try to get it banned. I mean, like, if it's illegal, I would, hope that the authorities would step in. But I mean, like, just the insanity that's at play. The idea that child pornography is still available, like, all over Twitter. All right. And I didn't even get a reason for why my account was deleted. They just deleted it. I had a woman on my show last weekend. I put the tweet out saying that she was going to be on. Her name is Juliet Engel. She is a survivor of the MK Ultra program. Okay. Like, her family is like, a whole family of spooks. She's not the only one that was experimented on. And I should say, MK Ultra, although it's dubbed a conspiracy theory, is a real thing. I mean, like, you can look at the records, you can go to the church hearings, you can see the testimony that was given on it. They admitted it. It was all over North America, not only USA, but Canada. I'm sure it went down into Mexico as well. It's fucking real. Okay. But I put a tweet out and people start seeing it and they just delete my account without any notice, without any email, without any explanation of terms and conditions that I've broken. You know, I have never gotten suspended on Twitter before. I've never had a report against me. You know, I had people who doxed me, put my name and address on Twitter, and it wasn't until after I got deleted that they finally removed the offending content, and other people got their notification saying that this had been deleted. So, you know, it's insane. I don't know what to do about it. You know, I think the only thing that can be done is to remove their Section 230 protections. I think some places like Gab deserve to keep Section 230 because they truly are a free speech platform. They're not editing content. They're allowing people to say what they want. It's under the guise of free speech. And if you don't like what somebody has to say, you can either mute them or you can block them, or you can just go to your own little corner of the internet and be in your own echo chamber. You know, but not Twitter, not Facebook, not Google, not YouTube, you know, and it's all designed to minimize content that is positive towards the president. It's pretty insane. I never honestly thought that we would be living in a world like what we are right now. It blows my mind.
So there was no warning on Twitter. Have you ever
No.
gotten strikes or anything
Never.
on YouTube?
Never. No community guideline strikes, no copyright strikes. I've had nothing. It just said, you know, I was demonetized back in May. It said that I had multiple violations, never had a single violation, said that I produced harmful and hateful content. I am like the cheeriest guy. You know, I talk about good things happening. You know, the worst thing that I've ever talked about was the riots that were overtaking the United States. You know, you want to talk about promoting violence and promoting harmful content. You know, you've got people like the Young Turks out there. They're like, burn it down. You know, let's just like take him fucking down. And that's all that they talk about, you know, and they're angry and they're obsessive. And, you know, I mean, if I'm obsessed about anything, it's about how good the country's doing. You know, I mean, despite all of this bullshit with this pandemic, despite all of the things that they've tried to throw in the path of our nation as we're moving forward, you know, I mean, look at the facts. You know, I mean, like, most people are doing better despite everything that's happening, and all of the shutdowns and like the slowdown in the economy, it can all go right back to this pandemic, what's going on with that. And, you know, I mean, it's the people that want to keep the country closed and want to stop us from moving forward. They also hate President Trump. So, you know, I feel like there is a real correlation there. But again, you know, you can't talk about that.
But of course, yeah, of course there's a correlation, because when Trump wanted to open up the country, he was accused of not taking the virus seriously. So now it's the same way that they have to keep beating that dead horse of the Russiagate, because God forbid they admit that there was nothing there. Because they kept accusing Trump of not taking the virus seriously, they have to keep doing that. They can't admit now that the virus might have been, you know, not as serious as Trump kind of made it out to be, or maybe that Trump was right that the lockdown and all the negative effects are going to come from that are going to be much worse than the virus. So they have to keep beating this dead horse. And obviously they want to keep scaring people because they want people to, you know, vote, not go to the polls and send their votes in the mail. But without a doubt, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, when they decide what truth is, and when they decide that they're going to force feed you mainstream narratives and you can't get access to anything else, it's insanity. People have to open their eyes, and people have to realize that, like, without a doubt, like, regardless what side you land on, this isn't good for anybody. This isn't good for anybody. We have to have open debates. And when you're, like you said, when you're just sharing ideas, when ideas are being censored, not, like you said, you're not promoting violence. You know, I've seen many of your shows, and you've always seen like a pretty positive dude. You never promote violence. You just stating your opinions and perspectives. Then, you know, it's crazy that you're being censored, and there's so many other things that I could pick out on YouTube that should be censored, or probably, you know, is promoting violence to some extent. And it's just, I mean, I just shared a thing, you know, it was one of the Google founders who, you know, on his Wikipedia page, you know, he's worth like $63 billion. And he was one of the Google founders and the president of Alphabet. I forget his name now. I'm having a brain fart. But it says on his Wikipedia page, he gives money to the Democratic Party and, you know, Democratic organizations. He's one of the Google founders, and he's the president of Alphabet. So if he's giving money to Democrats, what makes you think there's not going to be some type of, you know, censorship more towards the conservative perspectives than the Democratic perspectives and people on the left? So it's like, it's madness. It's so obvious, and they still play this game, and it's crazy. It really is. It's frustrating because there's still people who are wearing masks and pretending it's it's important, and it's all political now. I mean, none of it has to do with science, none of it has to do with facts, none of it has to do with like actually having a open dialogue and coming to the conclusion that, okay, maybe wearing a mask is what I should do. It's all politically driven. People are wearing masks because they have to keep pushing this idea that things are dangerous, things are, this virus is much more dangerous than Trump ever would admit to, and he's putting us all at risk because he wants to open up the country and all this stuff. And like I say, if you wear just a scarf over your face, which isn't an N95 mask, it has no scientific evidence, it's not designed to protect you from any viruses or the spread of any viruses, people are okay with that. They're only okay if you're not wearing something on your face. So that means it's not about the spread of the virus. It's just about compliance. It's about social engineering. It's about, control of the masses and just making sure that you follow the herd. And so it's just it's madness. And all the other, like the anxiety and depression, I mean, seeing somebody smile when you run into somebody is pleasant. It's inviting. It can lighten up your day. You're hiding people's smiles. You're causing awkwardness when you run into somebody that you know, and you don't know if they feel comfortable you being near them, if they feel comfortable you pushing down your mask, or vice versa. Like there's all this awkwardness. There's a lack of people communicating, talking. We're social creatures. It's unnatural and very harmful, I think, to us, to our children. And there's going to be lasting effects to all this, this isolation and just, I mean, we're getting messages here in Massachusetts that don't get together with your loved ones on Thanksgiving. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm like, you're literally telling people to do that. I mean, and all we're talking about is cases. We're not talking about deaths anymore. This is the same way that like it was global warming. And then they were like, well, we're kind of wrong with all our predictions. Let's call it global climate change. It's like, first it was deaths, it was all about deaths. And then it's like, well, nobody's really dying. Let's call it cases. Let's focus on cases now. It's like they keep moving the goalposts. So it's crazy. But let's get into some of your, I like kind of getting to know somebody's history and kind of how you got into all this. And, we've talked a lot about like kind of the present stuff and current events and whatnot, but I want to get into like, how did you get into all this? Like, what your channel is Red Pill. What red pilled you? Was it one thing? Was it many things? That how did it all happen?
Well, I mean, I think for anybody, it's kind of like a timeline, a continuum of events. The very first thing was when I was, I mean, I guess, I think back to being a kid, and I was always interested in like stuff that people might consider to be wild. Like we had some strange paranormal experiences that happened at my house when I was a little kid. Like I remember like seeing things that non-physical entities, balls of light, or I woke up one night in the middle of the night and there was like, well, I guess like an angel like floating over me. It was like a woman with wings. I don't know how else to describe it. This is the first time I've told this on the air, but so I mean, like there was that, and I had this really, like all these odd experiences. But the very first thing that I really credit was when I was maybe like between 5 and 8. I don't remember exactly. But my mom was reading On the Trail of the Assassins by Jim Garrison about the assassination of President Kennedy. And, it had all of these, autopsy photos and diagrams and like stills from the Zapruder film and stuff. And, and I was like, well, who killed President Kennedy, Mom? And we used to read books together, like big books like that. And so like I like was, reading along with her. And she was like, well, there was a conspiracy to have him killed, and, nobody really knows. Supposedly Lee Harvey Oswald was, the lone shooter, but there's all this evidence to say that, either it was somebody else or, there were other people involved. He always said he was innocent, and then they killed him right away. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. Okay. So I just realized that if we live in a world where somebody who was like as positive and good for the country as President Kennedy was, and people in his own administration or, you know, other forces outside of that could have him killed and then move us into this very, very dark direction, then, you know, what else was being covered up? What else was being hidden? And so, I mean, I kind of always was looking behind the veil and trying to see what the true story was behind whatever the official narrative was, you know? And so I did a lot of research as I was growing up, looking to a lot of different things, you know, I mean, be it cryptids or UFOs or, you know, assassinations, you know, just all kinds of different things. I remember the Iran-Contra affair when I was little, you know, sitting watching the hearings with my parents and, you know, realizing how much was at stake with like all of these global machinations, like the all of these operations taking place and things being compartmentalized. And, you know, you've got the CIA and you've got these other intelligence agencies, and it's not just us, it's all of these other countries. And there's so much happening in secret. You know, drugs, that was huge. You know, I mean, I remember the rise of crack cocaine, and, you know, I knew early on that the CIA had something to do with that. And, so, you know, I guess for many, many years, my entire life, you know, we would always go to the library. I would, you know, start looking into certain subjects. And, you know, when I got older, like during high school, you know, I kind of like cooled off on it because, I mean, I was interested in girls and smoking pot and stuff. You know, I wasn't really too into everything else. And then when my daughter was born in 2001, she was born in August. And then shortly after that, 9/11 happens. And I remember sitting at work and we like hear it over the radio and we're listening and the first tower fell. And I turned to the Darren, the guy sitting next to me in the cubicle, and I'm like, one of the World Trade Towers just fell. And he was like, that's fucking impossible. He was like, there's no way. I don't believe it. And I was like, well, they just said it on the radio. And he was like, that's not possible. He was like, if you know anything about how they built those buildings, he was like 10 years older than me. He was like, you know, they built those buildings specifically to withstand, you know, a jet plane flying into it. That can't happen. And so they sent us home. I get home and like the other tower falls, like as I'm walking through the door, like see it coming down. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe this. This is insane. And, you know, I remember watching it at the time and, you know, this was like just as people were starting to put videos online. And so there were all these clips and this was one of the first things that I can remember like going and seeking out, you know, like footage from 9/11 and trying to, you know, look at it from all these various angles because there was so much of it. And, you know, I remember like seeing puffs of smoke coming out of the building, you know, like before it fell down. You know, it was a couple years later, and then I saw on somebody's website, you know, hey, this BBC is talking about Building 7. It's already fallen down, and you can see it right behind them. And then you see the footage of Building 7, and it just, you know, like pancakes through the center. And I mean, there's no way. That's not what happens when a building catches fire. You know, I mean, like that's never happened in the history of the world except for 9/11. You know, I mean, it's just not how things work. You know, so like that was probably like the biggest thing that I was like trying to pay attention to while my daughter was, you know, young. And, you know, I remember also the Oklahoma City bombing, you know, that was obviously well before that. But that one seemed strange to me too, you know, I mean, because it just looked like, I was like, how did a van full of fertilizer do this? You know, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And I remember the John Doe. There was another John Doe that they reported, and they put his sketch out because he looked like a kid that lived around the corner from me. And I was like, that's not Isaac, but it looks just like him. And then he just disappeared. You know, like all of a sudden they're not looking for him anymore. They've got Timothy McVeigh. I'm from Michigan. Okay. So like that one really stuck with me because the guys who supposedly did it were from Michigan, or at least hung out in Michigan. And, yeah, so I mean, that's really how it started, I guess, you know. And then when I started deciding to make videos, I mean, I had already been on YouTube since 2006. like pretty much right when it started. And I got on YouTube so that I could find stuff like this, like, research things that you were not going to find other places, other people putting things together, or raw video of events like this. And try to look into it myself. And, it's been an interesting, evolution watching YouTube like turn from a platform where you could find anything that you couldn't find anyplace else to now a platform where you can only find everything that you can find everywhere else.
Well, I think the most amazing part of that story is your age. How old? I thought you were younger than me.
Yeah. I'm 42.
Are you really? Oh,
yeah.
I'm 35. I thought you were. When you're like, wait, I had my daughter in 01, I'm like, whoa, either you were getting busy real young or yeah, that's hilarious. But it's funny how many people, like Kate Awakening and some of these other people on YouTube, it was the QAnon thing that like opened their eyes, and or the Epstein thing. And I'm just like, whoa, I feel old, because I'm like, Epstein, I'm like, that's like was just around the corner. I mean, a lot of us have been in this world for such a long time, like you said, from the Oklahoma City bombing, which was always dear to my heart. That's or interesting and kind of fascinating me, because it was on my birthday. It was April 19th. And being born in April 19th of 85, that April 19th date and roughly around that date, a lot of weird shit always happened. So I'm always like, wow, man, like it's like, because you had obviously the Columbine shooting, April 20th. You had the Boston bombings was around that date. So it was like all this stuff, the weird stuff happened around that date. So it was like, I'm like designed to be intrigued with these things. But yeah, I mean, I'm much like yourself. Like it wasn't, I don't think, one thing. It was a lot of little things that kind of like, and that's why I always tell people, when you have discussions with people, when you don't think you're getting through to them, you never know if you're, how much that you're chipping away. And maybe the conversation you have with them doesn't change their worldview, or doesn't open their eyes, or change their perspectives. But as people continue to, or as they continue to get exposed to different perspectives and opinions, like eventually they'll be like, okay, there's too much here. There's too much smoke not to be fire. And I think, we never know what type of impact we're having on people. And I know it's hard, especially now during election year, it's all about divide and conquer. They do a great job of just turning everybody on one another. And it just becomes impossible to have a logical, civil discussion about anything without somebody getting upset. But I think it's necessary. I think it is. And I think shows like yours and mine, I think people need to, show that these discussions can happen, and people need to, I don't know. We live in such a crazy world where just like you and I probably agree on so many different things, and we come from completely different backgrounds, and we come from, and we might disagree on some things, we might disagree on some things, but the fact that people can't be exposed to your work, or somebody else's work that has similar views, I mean, it has to be concerning to everybody. And yeah, I mean, I think JFK, OKC, 9/11, the Epstein thing, I think all these situations, these events, have probably been contributing to red pilling a lot of people,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that's why I was kind of surprised with the Epstein story, because a lot of people in the alternative media world, I'm sure you were talking about it way before the media finally decided to make it front page news. But didn't you find it interesting that like all of a sudden it was okay to talk about it, right? Like, because it was like, I talked to quite a few people about this, because I always found it kind of weird that, like, we would talk about the Franklin scandal, you talk about, Jeffrey Epstein, all these things, and nobody would report on it. And then all of a sudden it was like they got the green light that it was okay to discuss it, and it was on front page news. What do you think that was?
Well, I think they knew he wasn't going to be alive for very long. I mean, it's like if they didn't talk about it, now that it was, out in the open, he was arrested. Okay, so, well, he's obviously been arrested. The government has a case against him. They're going to be bringing that case to court. And if they don't talk about it, then it's very clear that they're covering something up. However, if they throw him under the bus and they know that he's not going to be alive for very long to defend himself or to incriminate anybody else, then it's totally safe. Now they've got their sacrificial lamb, and they can just, act like Jeffrey Epstein was the only multi-billionaire who was running children over different lines of different countries, and had his own private island. I mean, there's multiple billionaires with their own private islands who are also friends with Jeffrey Epstein. All of these different people hung out with Jeffrey. They mingled together, But that's not to say that everybody that Jeffrey ever came in contact with is a bad person. I think everybody deserves their day in court, okay? I think that there is a certain likelihood that if you vacationed on Epstein Island, you're probably a pedophile. There's probably a good chance for that, But still, I've never advocated for dragging somebody out in the street. Let's bring them into court. Let's present the evidence, and if they're guilty, then they can rot their ass in a jail cell until the day they die. I think that is far better punishment than anything that mob justice could ever do. But yeah, I think that they knew, these powerful people that were closely associated with Epstein, they knew that if this went to court, then they would all be exposed, and all of their information would come out. So I'm sure that the people that were behind him, because let's be honest, he was associated with some type of an intelligence agency, whether it's CIA or Mossad or both. Perhaps he was a freelance agent and he was working with a number of different agencies throughout the globe. But how long do you think that it would take for them to have a quick meeting and say, okay, well, so he's in MCC in New York City. All right, well, we can have him dead within 2 weeks. Okay. And then they went ahead and took care of it. And then they let everybody know, like, all right, because that stuff comes from the top down. Jeff Zucker says, you've got the green light. Go ahead and talk about Jeffrey Epstein. It's all Epstein all day until he's dead. And the same thing happened at every other, news reporting agency. I use that term loosely, but mainstream media, fake news agency. And, if it wasn't for the fact that they had some plans for him, I think that maybe that might not ever have happened.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. I think Greg Carlwood said it. It's like we're playing conspiracy bingo, and all the things that we said that were true, that everybody laughed about and called a conspiracy theory, like they're all becoming so obviously true that it's like, how do you keep questioning us? Like, how do you keep questioning people who are saying things? Like, I've gone to the point, like, and a long time ago, that like the craziest theory I will entertain, because there's been so many crazy theories that end up being true or having a little bit of truth to it. So it's like, I'm not going to dismiss anything. I'm going to look into it. I'm not going to believe it, without looking into it, but I'm going to at least entertain it. I won't say anything's too crazy to be possible, because when you think about all these powerful people, the Weinstein and Epstein, they were linked to so many. I think Obama's daughters worked with Weinstein.
Yes.
They were like interns, or I don't know, worked with him for a little bit. And this guy is a creep. He's a monster, and yet the president is linked. The ex-president Obama is his family. He was okay with his family hanging out with this creep, and I'm sure they knew what was going on. Of course, they all knew what was going on. It was kind of like Bill Cosby when that became public. A lot of comedians are like, yeah, we heard whispers of it. It's like everybody hears whispers, even if they're not openly talking about this. They're hearing whispers, and they're just not talking about it. And personally, I think that if you hear about this stuff and you don't speak up or you don't do anything about it, the same way that if you were murdering somebody and I'm just with you and I do nothing, I'm also equally responsible. I think some of these people should be responsible, just for knowing and not doing anything. And but you look at like the child trafficking, you look at so many things, even the chemtrails, some of the evidence that now that they openly talk about it, some of these things that seem like complete crazy nonsense. It's like, now look, like, do you believe me now? But the crazy thing is that even though you think that, like, okay, this became, you'll talk about the next thing and they're like, yeah, but vaccines, that's conspiracy theory. I'm like, wait, like you doubted me on the child trafficking thing, and that became undeniable, and now you think I'm lying about the next thing. It's like some people, you just can't get through to them.
You're so right. And it always shocks me, like on the show, when something like that will come up, like we keep pushing the needle and going farther and farther and farther. And at a certain point, people just shut down. They're like, aliens? Absolutely not. I cannot believe that, there's life outside of planet Earth, even though, the universe is never ending. It's an infinite void in space, and there's all kinds of planets. The likelihood in my mind is very high. Plus, people have seen too much. There have been too many anecdotal cases to just rule it out altogether. Or not to mention cattle mutilations, or like abductions that happen to people. To me, I am the exact same way. There is so much possibility out there in the world, and there has been so many things that over time have been proven to have some level of validity. How can you just discount something without at least looking into it or hearing the evidence from somebody or their own personal account as to what's going on, what's happened? It shocks me. But I think that certain things are just too mentally jarring, I mean, like it just shatters your worldview too much, and a lot of people are not willing to step outside of that box. They have their own mental confines of what they are comfortable, like, believing and looking into, and if you go outside of that, then it's just too much of an earthquake for their brain to handle.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a big part of it is, it's like one of my favorite quotes. It's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. And I think it is one of those things where it's almost like you don't want to believe that. It's like, well, wait, so you're telling me they didn't trick you, but they tricked me? Like, you got it figured out and I'm an idiot and I fell for it. Like, a little bit could be ego. A little bit could be, like you said, like, the way that they see the world would shatter, and that's too traumatizing to kind of digest all at once. But yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I think if any good came out of this whole lockdown and pandemic thing, it's the fact that people are being skeptical of things they were never skeptical about. And I think the reason why this issue is so important, this whole censorship and the censorship towards the, all the alternative or the doctors that were giving alternative perspectives on what was going on, is the fact that this issue is seeping into our personal lives. I've said this on the show a bunch of times where, like, when I was growing up, I was always very passionate about geopolitics, and like yourself, like September 11th was one of those issues that really caught my attention, and I became very anti-Iraq war and getting involved in the Middle East and all that stuff. And but it was hard to get other people passionate about it, because you could go on with your everyday life. You could go to a grocery store. You could bring your kids to school. You could go out to eat with the wife. Didn't affect you much if we were in Syria or Iraq or whatever. The majority of the people could go on with their everyday lives, didn't affect them. But this issue is different, because this issue has seeped into our personal lives. It's affecting, our ability to send our kids to school without having a mandatory flu vaccine, like in Massachusetts they mandated. Our schools are looking like prisons, where it's like kids can't be together, they can't touch each other, they have to be apart, they have to wear masks all the time. Sports, kids can't do sports. They can't enjoy their lives. You can't go out to eat and have a drink with your wife. It's like all these things that make living worth living, or life worth living. The experiences, the laughing, the being with your friends, being with your community. Because now it's like people are worried, like, okay, maybe we shouldn't get in big groups. Maybe, maybe I won't invite them over because I don't know how they feel, and all these this awkwardness. And it's like, time is the most valuable thing. Like, we don't get to, at the end of our journey, say, hey, I don't like the way I did it, let me hit reset and do it again. Like, you're taking months, possibly years out of people's lives where they could be creating memories, experiences, and we don't know how much time we have. There's people who, I have a cousin who passed away during the lockdown, the height of the lockdown. He I believe, was having some heart issues that I think he was a little paranoid about going to the hospital to get it looked at. And then, maybe it wasn't, but maybe it could have been something that could have been prevented if he wasn't so afraid of going to the hospital and getting looked at. So, like, and how many stories are like that? How many kids are going through trauma and anxiety because parents are going through trauma and anxiety, and they sense that. So even if you try to reassure them and give them a explanation, let's be honest, most adults have anxiety because they don't really know what's going on. They don't know what to believe. So even if you try to reassure the children, it's having some psychological effect. Alcoholism has went up. Alcoholics who needed AA, who couldn't go to it for months because you didn't let people gather. I mean, people who needed church for community, just to give them a sense of community and give them those that I don't know, hope, and which some people need. So it's like all these long-term effects. And what you did was you hurt the small businesses. The mom and pop places are the ones that are shutting down. They're the ones who are struggling. It's not the big box store. It's not it's not Walmart, it's not Home Depot, it's not Staples, it's not Target. It's the local mom and pop restaurant. So what you're doing is you're just filtering out all the small ones, and you're just creating a monopoly of big corporations. And it's like the fact that people are still talking about like locking down the country again and doing all this stuff. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it's either you're completely brainwashed, or your political views are much more important than any truth, and your hatred towards somebody, because let's be honest, nobody's voting for Biden. You're either voting for Trump or you're voting against Trump.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody's actually saying I want Biden. I mean, they would have voted for a cardboard cutout of Mickey Mouse. I mean, they would have voted for anybody as long as it wasn't Trump. So to me, like, the fact that your hatred towards somebody can blind you to that extreme, it shows like the power of propaganda, the power of the media, the power of tribalism, where you end up just defending your team regardless if your team is wrong in all aspects. I mean, you screwed your own team in other regards too, because I mean, Bernie Sanders would have made more sense and would have put up a much better fight against Trump than Biden, and yet you don't seep through that. So it's like people who are still falling for this, because I'm a political atheist. I mean, I don't know if you saw the last Union of the Unwanted, but I had Greg Palast join us, who is actually his new book is How Trump Stole the 2020 Election, and so that was an interesting Union of Unwanted, to say the least. But it was but I don't want to create an echo chamber. I had him on my show recently, and we talked about it, and we disagreed on a lot of things. But I think we need to have those discussions. And but yeah, I mean, it's just it's so as a parent, and is this a topic that you seem much more passionate about than other ones because of the same reasons I'm discussing, like the idea that it's affecting not just our foreign policy, usually affects how much our debt we're in, and the people who join the military, but a lot of people who aren't in the military aren't really affected that much. But this issue is affecting all of us. And do you think it's why maybe you get as worked up or as passionate about exposing this the same way I am?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, at the heart of it, every single like division wedge issue that's out there in like popular culture right now, in my mind, is specifically designed to thwart the best efforts of President Trump. They hate him so much. And, I mean, we saw after he was elected, Google had that hug it out session where they all talked about, like what a terrible thing this was and what they're going to do to fix it in 2020, how they're going to all take some type of action. And they've gotten so good at brainwashing people that, everything is about maintaining that propaganda. And one of the reasons they had to delete us is because they had lost control of that messaging. We had so many people, like you said, going to YouTube. They're like, what is the truth of coronavirus? Or they start looking into other things because they're not at work, or they're working from home, and half the time they're not really working. They just get to do whatever they want. So everybody started researching. And, either people bought into the bullshit that the mainstream media was telling them, or people started questioning it. And I think a lot more people started questioning it because, before they could just marginalize people like us. They could just, say these people are crazy, they're kooks, they're anti-science, they're anti-reason or whatever it is, well, you don't believe in global warming, you're a nut, you don't believe in vaccinations, then, you're going to spread syphilis and smallpox or whatever it might be. But now too many people are like, no, I'm not just going to accept what it is that you're trying to pour down my throat. And instead, I'm going to ask questions, or I'm going to go do my own research and then make an informed decision. And they just can't afford to have people making their own decisions. They can only accept people, drinking the Kool-Aid of whatever it is that hot button issue at the very moment. But President Trump is like an existential threat to that whole system, because he's pushing our country in the complete opposite direction of where it was going, and he did it fast. fast. You know, Obama said, you know, what you have a magic button, you know, how are you going to bring manufacturing back? Well, boop, he pushed it and manufacturing came back to this country. You know, people started thriving. You know, there are jobs, you know, upon jobs upon jobs. You know, doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, Asian, you know, Native American, whatever you are, there are so many more opportunities. And the Democrats just continually keep trying to shut all of this down. And the only reason they're doing it is because they can't allow Trump to win a second term, because if he wins a second term, then they're finished. You know, I think that people, I mean, let's look objectively. Both the KKK and Antifa were started by the Democrat Party. You know, I mean, they are both militant wings on either side of the Democrat Party. And, you know, I mean, with those groups, they can scare people and get them to do whatever they want, you know? So the lockdown wasn't working. People were starting to come out of their homes. Okay, well, now we're going to have riots for 6 months at a time, and you still can't come out of your home. Only now we're going to tell you that you can't have Thanksgiving, you know, or and you better kneel down before us and tell us that, you know, by the very nature of the color of your skin, something that you can't control, that you are a terrible person, and you have institutional bias built into you, and you know, even, you know, but I mean, like, because I really felt, I mean, like, I've lived through the evolution of racism here in the United States, as I'm sure you have. You know, I mean, like, things were changing for the better. You know, I mean, like, they were getting to the point where they were like, you know, we don't need affirmative action anymore. It's time to start hiring people based upon the merit of their deeds and, you know, how good of a job they do. And then in California, now they're trying to make laws which make it okay to discriminate against people. You know, it's an absolute insanity. Like, it's gone full circle completely in the other direction. And everything that I see them doing is it's all about getting back to some level of control where they can tell us what to do and what to think and how to feel, where to go, who to vote for, you know, and what to believe.
Well, that's why Ice Cube, what he's been saying of late, actually makes sense. Like, this idea, people on the left, right? If they are just going to vote for whoever the left decides is going to represent them, regardless if he's a good candidate, regardless of his record, then why the hell is the left ever going to do anything for the people that are giving them the votes? Like,
Yep.
you know, and every once in a while I listen to Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik, and Jamal, one of the hosts on there, he's been saying this, and he's very left leaning and whatnot. But he says that he's like, we can't keep giving them our votes, because if we do, then they're going to keep giving us nothing in return. Like, we need to prove or show them that, hey, we're willing to leave the party, we're willing to vote for the other guy, just to threaten them, so then they actually give us some of the stuff we want. Because if not, then I mean, they don't have to do anything, because people have proven that you'll vote for anybody on the left just because they're on the left. So it's like, why do anything for you? Why actually promise anything for you? So it's ridiculous. I mean, and then you look at, like, you know, the media. I mean, they reported on the Giuliani thing, the Borat movie thing, like it was the huge fucking deal, and there was nothing there. Like, it was completely blown out of proportion. But yet, the Hunter Biden laptop that actually has some really juicy shit, you know, when you're talking about, like, his niece, pictures of his niece, when you're talking about, you know, the fact that he was a lover with his, you know, his brother's widow, you know, like, all this craziness, you know, he's a crack addict. I mean, I get it. Like, as a parent, you can't be responsible for everything your kid does. But as a parent, I also understand if my kid's a fuck up, I am a little bit responsible for it. I can't say that I'm not responsible for it at all. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's examples of you know, of parents who did everything right, and maybe the kid just went down the wrong road, made one or two bad decisions, and next thing you know, even with some guidance and some great support, they still messed up and needed help. But, you know, in many cases, I think, you know, you see a shitty kid, you meet shitty parents. Like, I know plenty of teachers that talk about, you know, the kids that aren't paying attention or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not the kid's fault, man. I'm like, I'll tell them, like, I bet you if you meet those parents, I'm like, they're shitheads. And you realize, oh, this is why the kid's like this. And I'm like, and that's the case. And they're like, absolutely. Like, you end up, you know, you having a parent teacher conference. He's like, the parents don't show up. And you're like, oh, okay, this is why the kid's like this, you know? So it's without a doubt, you know, and the other thing too is just we know that if it was the other side, they would have blown it up. It would have been the biggest story ever, and they would have used it to just say, you know, how shitty of a guy Trump is. I mean, they took the whole like grab him by the pussy. I mean, somebody, and that's what people don't realize. It's like they have teams. When you talk about Fusion GPS and all these companies, like they actually get hired to find dirt.
Mhm.
Like, so when that video came out, or the audio came out of the grab him by the pussy, like that wasn't coincidentally just released like right before the election, just like, you know, this Borat movie wasn't coincidentally just released right before the election. So it's like this idea, like politics is a dirty fucking game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had Roger Stone on my show twice. He says it all the time. He's like, you know, politics isn't beanbag. You know, it's like, it's a dirty game. And guess what? They're both fucking dirty and they both do dirty things. So this idea that like, you know, Trump's this evil person, but everybody on your side, they have this amazing moral compass. It's nonsense.
It's bullshit. And, you know, to your point about, you know, the left, you know, making promises and not following through, the fucking right has had the exact same problem. President Trump is the only president in my lifetime that I can remember promising certain things and actually delivering on them. In fact, he's been more effective than anybody that I can remember in my entire lifetime. You know, I mean, every single administration, it's like promises made, disappointments delivered, and it's over and over and over again. You know, I remember crying the night that Obama was elected. I was crying like in happiness. You know, like I was like, we finally made it as a country. You know, we've gotten to the point where we could elect an African American man to the office of the presidency, and he didn't do shit. You know, they gave him a Nobel Peace Prize for absolutely nothing. Even he was like, I don't deserve this. What are you doing? You know, but yes, it is a very dirty game. And there are essentially zero morals when it comes down to political operatives on either side of the fence, no matter what you're doing, you know, but I feel that Democrats, like in today's world, they have taken it to a new level because, you know, they can't objectively look at the country and say, you know, okay, just because President Trump is a Republican or just because he's not a Democrat, you know, I have to go against him 100%. Like in years past, at least there was some bipartisan leadership, you know, people working together across the aisle to do certain things when it benefited them. You know, I mean, generally speaking, anytime there's an issue that comes up that's going to be good for the people, like they can't get it done. Okay. President Trump has forced things to happen in a good way for a lot of people, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, and they can't accept it. They won't allow it to be, you know, part of the conversation, and they constantly have to come up with something that is going to be the next scandal. You know, the Hunter Biden shit, man, this pisses me off. This was the last video I made on YouTube. And, you know, within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, 18 hours, my channel was taken down. Completely deleted. And the day before that, I had broken that story about Joe Biden, you know, and Osama bin Laden. You know, the United States government knew where Osama bin Laden was. They let him hide out in Iran. Okay, George W. Bush started that. It was inherited by the Obama administration. And then when they wanted to get Obama reelected, they had him brought into Pakistan for a trophy kill so they could say, look at this, yay, terrorism, we're doing something about it. And you know, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you know, and truthfully, Donald Trump is the first Republican that I've ever voted for, you know, but, you know, I considered myself a Democrat before, but then like I felt farther and farther away from what the Democrat Party represented. And, you know, I mean, like I would vote for President Trump, whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. I mean, I like his values. I like what he stands for, you know, and as far as the grab him by the pussy video, you know, I mean, this is my daughter, you know, she's 19 years old and she came to me and she was like, Dad, how can you support somebody who says I'm going to grab her by the pussy? And I was like, you know, honey, I was like, let's just look me in the eyes. You know, are you telling me that you've never like spoken crudely about boys when it's just you and your girlfriends hanging out? And she like just started cracking up and she couldn't look at me. And she was like, well, that's different. And I'm like, how's it different? And she's like, he's supposed to be the president. And I'm like, well, he wasn't the president when he said it. You know, it was just a couple of guys hanging out in a trailer. You know, I mean, I don't know a single person who hasn't had, you know, phases in their life where they were just like all hormones and looking to go get laid and, you know, capitalizing on what they had, whether it's good looks or a position of power. You know, I mean, people got to trade on what they have. And if you're a rich and powerful person, whether you're a man or a woman, people are probably going to want to sleep with you. And again, he wasn't president. He wasn't a political candidate at that time. And this stuff with Rudy Giuliani, the only reason they put that out was because the Hunter Biden stuff came out. And it's so much more than just Hunter Biden smoking crack or sleeping with his 14-year-old niece or with his dead brother's wife. He was sleeping with her before Beau died, and then he continued the affair after he died. And then, after they broke up, he got married to a crack whore like 6 days later or something like that. But this is actual like financial and misconduct, public corruption, Joe Biden being intimately involved with Hunter Biden being partners with the Chinese Communist Party while Joe Biden is vice president of the United States, and while Joe Biden is supposed to be negotiating with the Chinese and allowing them to do whatever they wanted, gaining a military advantage over the United States, handing over weapons or defense materials, allowing them to basically run roughshod. China has infiltrated the United States. I think that they own far more than just Joe Biden or Hunter Biden. The Pelosi's, I think you're going to see the Kerrys come out, Christopher Hines, all of these people that were business partners with Hunter Biden, their parents are all powerful politicians. And all of these people are dirty, and they're selling out America to the Chinese. Remember, Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy as her limo driver for 20 years. What do you think that guy found out? How much information was passed off to the Chinese as a result of that? How did China get their hands on all of our intellectual property for the last 30 years? How is that possible? Somebody was handing it over. So whatever's on the laptop, I think that it's far more than what we've learned so far, and it's going to happen. It's going to come out before the election. But I think that, yes, you're right. Joe Biden was probably a shitty father. I think we've all seen him sniffing Chris Coons' daughter on stage, a lot more than just her. He has an unnatural obsession with touching children, okay? And I think that it goes far beyond whatever we've seen on camera. I'm going to make a prediction right now and say that the Chinese having blackmail material on Hunter, what we've been shown so far, I think it's going to go a lot farther. I think that they're probably also going to come out with blackmail material on maybe Obama and Joe Biden himself, and even some other high-ranking people in the U.S. government. Because when you look at the choices these people have made, capitulating to China, it doesn't make any sense unless they are being blackmailed and there's something there. Blackmail is the currency of the rich and famous. These people exist in this world because they've been compromised. That's the only reason that they've been able to attain these heights of power. And the only person who hasn't is Donald Trump, and that's why he scares the shit out of them, because they can't control him, and they couldn't control us. And I think they're getting to the point, as soon as November 3rd hits, once he is reelected, then it is game over for these people, because things are going to change. Gloves are going to be off. He's not going to have to worry about things looking political. Right now, I think they've got the goods on all of these various people. I think that crimes that Joe Biden has committed, selling out his country, are completely unforgivable. They're going to come out. People are going to find out. People are going to be indicted. And once the election's over, there's no reason to leave him untouched. And the same reason there's no reason to leave Hillary Clinton untouched. She clearly broke the law, but because she was a Clinton, because she was running for president, nobody could touch her. And in his first term, they did their best job to throw everything but the kitchen sink at him to try to make sure that they could ruin him, and it hasn't worked. And now here we are. I think that more people than ever realize exactly what's been happening with this situation. It's a snow job. Everything that they're saying is a lie. They can't come up with anything legitimate, so they have to keep making stuff up. And when it comes down to it, it was Joe and Hunter Biden who had, Russian money and Chinese money and Kazakh money and Romanian money. Human trafficking is involved with that shit too. Everything that they have tried to project onto President Trump, they have been guilty of themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing is, there's been times where he does things that I'm like, like when you wish Ghislaine Maxwell well in prison, or when you do Operation Warp Speed. But without a doubt, he's done some things that no other president has ever done. And I know a lot of people have said that about whoever their favorite president is. But how many presidents have talked about the TPP openly like he did?
Exactly.
During the debate when he was running, I think it was Ben Carlson, who's one of them that was a doctor, right? He was a doctor, right? Ben
Yeah,
Carlson.
Ben Carlson. Yeah.
Yeah. He, you know, they were trying to make Trump look bad during one of the debates, and they brought up the vaccine issue. And I don't know if you remember this, but they're like, oh, you know, Trump thinks that vaccines could be causing autism and blah, blah, blah. What do you think, Ben Carlson? You're an actual doctor. What do you think? And Trump kind of clarified. He's like, all I'm saying is that I think maybe we should look into how many we're giving at such a young age. And Ben Carlson's actually, I think it ended up working in Trump's favor, where he's like,
Yeah.
you know what, in that case, like, I think that, you know, we could be giving out too many vaccines at such a young age. So it's like, the fact that a sitting president at one point has ever said anything like that publicly, the fact that he talked to Robert Kennedy Jr. in regards to, you know, possibly looking into the vaccine issue, you know, there is a tape of Bill Gates talking about meeting with the president. I don't know if you've seen that, where he talked about, yeah, so initially he was in conversations with Robert Kennedy Jr., and then there was a tape of Bill Gates talking about a meeting with Trump and him bringing up the vaccine thing. He's like, hey, I've met with Robert Kennedy Jr. and you know, I have some concerns about vaccines. Like, what's your take? And he's like, oh, that's conspiracy theory nonsense. He's like, that's insanity, you know, this and that. So I mean, the fact that he's even talking to people about this stuff, the fact that and people know Roger Stone's, he's balls deep into the JFK assassination.
Oh yeah.
A lot of this stuff. I mean, the first time he was on my show was to promote his book, the LBJ, the case against LBJ book, the JFK assassination book. So I mean, Trump's very aware of some of these, you know, I guess for a lack of a better term, conspiracy theories, and he seems much more open-minded than any president has ever been to some of these things. So there is evidence. And then you look at like the hydroxychloroquine thing. I mean, that was a FU to big pharma, who couldn't have a treatment if they wanted to fast track vaccine. If there was any other alternative treatment for you know, the COVID disease, then they couldn't fast track the vaccine. So, you know, the fact that he openly kind of attempted to fuck big pharma by saying, hey, this stuff works, you know, it's a treatment, by the way, I'm taking it, you know,
Yeah.
like, that was pretty ballsy. And I think that, you know, he gets some shit for calling media fake news, but for the longest time, you know, we had left publications, right publications, and we knew that they would write hit pieces and whatnot. And it was a game that they played where they would ask you a question, and you knew as a politician they were only asking you this question because they were trying to get some soundbite or get you to, you know, say something incorrectly so they could write about it. But all the politicians would play along. They would play this game. Like they would just be like, okay, let me just make sure when this person asks me this question, I really, you know, speak properly and I don't mess up or whatever. But Trump didn't play along. What he said, he's like, fuck this game. What I'm doing is I'm calling you out on national TV, you know, with everybody watching, saying, no, I know what the fuck you're doing. You write, you know, false information. You write fake news. You write, you know, he pulled the curtain back. So I think there is example. And again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm just you know, I just like to, it happens that these are my stances. And right now, like you said, like, you know, there was times where you voted for a Democrat. Like, I don't think you changed. I think the party's changed. And I think, like, you know, what happened was, like, I'm always been very, you know, plant medicines and functional medicine and all this stuff. That was stuff that the people on the left supported for a long time. They were the ones who were trying to legalize marijuana because it could help people and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm anti-big pharma, and everybody on the right is on my side instead of the people on the left. And so it's like, it's weird. It's almost like, you know, you're, even if your ideas don't change, who represents you changes.
Yeah, no, I'm totally right there with you. That I had that exact same experience. You know, my mom, you know, she's always been into holistic medicine, and we've always tried to take natural things. You know, I'm not vaccinated. My daughter's not vaccinated, and yeah, I've always been anti big pharma. When I was younger, she did a voiceover for this documentary about Bayer and the blood crisis in the 80s when they knowingly infected a whole bunch of hemophiliacs with HIV. And so, you know, we've always known basically that big pharma is not your friend. You know, here's the thing about Trump, all right? So Operation Warp Speed, he has to operate within this world where every single side is going to attack him no matter what he does. All right. So there are people who want vaccines. and there are people who don't want vaccines. So Operation Warp Speed, all it does is make vaccines available if you want them. All right. So it's a happy medium. You know, you don't have to take them. He's not forcing anybody to take them. I've seen people be very nervous about it, you know, but the military, you know, well, the military is speedy and efficient. Okay. So they can quickly deliver it to people who, you know, who want to take it. If you don't want to take it, you don't have to take it. There's no penalty for not taking it. But he has to do things so that he can try to straddle that line, making sure that the critics are going to be satisfied, but also making sure that he's satisfying the base and the people who are actually, you know, critically thinking about this stuff. You know, the one thing that was really angered a lot of people when he did that first airstrike on Syria. Okay, a lot of people were like, "Oh, great! You know, he's just like Obama. You know, we just killed a whole bunch of Syrians." And then it comes out the next day, it was an empty airfield. You know, I mean, like, he satisfied the war hawks. It was like all of a sudden you had 24 hours of positive coverage. You had Bill Kristol and you know, all of these other major proponents of global war come out, and they were like, "Oh, Trump is finally the guy. You know, he's our guy now." But then it turns out nobody died. You know, and all it was a show of force. And so, well, there you go. You know, everybody that didn't want us to go to war, they're satisfied. Everybody that wanted us to go destroy Syria, they were satisfied for a moment, but he kind of threw them for a curveball. They didn't really know what to think. And Trump does that a lot. Like every decision that he makes is very tactical. And you have to think about it from a strategic point of view, because if you think about it purely at face value, then you're not going to get the effect of truly what's been done every time that he makes a decision. And that's another thing that I just love about him. You know, I mean, it's all a game of chess. And we're fighting for our country. We're fighting for our lives at this point. You know, if he was to lose, can you imagine Joe Biden in the office of the president? You know, I mean, it would be President Kamala Harris, basically. You know, I mean, like, I don't think Joe would be there for very long. I think that he would probably have a stroke, you know, or maybe a heart attack, or, you know, just kind of, you know, take the back seat and let Kamala go ahead and just take the reins. But you know, I mean, these high-level Democrats now are some of the most radical people that we've ever had in American politics. You know, like AOC and the Squad being like the front and center face of the Democrat Party. You know, that's not the majority of people who even identify as Democrats. I mean, that's like the Twitterati right there. That's like that vocal minority who is out there in social media calling everybody a Nazi and saying that you know, that hate speech is violence. You know, if you say a word that they're offended by, if you call them the wrong pronoun, then it's socially acceptable to get punched in the nose. But I mean, that's insanity. These people are going to destroy America if we get to that point. I give it till the end of the second term, Ricky, and you may be a Trump supporter. I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised with everything that happens, because there's going to be some major changes. There will definitely be some major changes.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm a Trump supporter now, because I think the biggest issue and the biggest topic is the COVID thing. Because I think all the other things, like, we can argue about his tax bills, we can argue about his foreign policy, we can argue about all that stuff. But the way I look at it is that I want my fucking life back. I want people to have the ability to be free again and enjoy life, smile, go out, do the things they've always done, and resist this new normal bullshit, and resist even the term the new normal. And to me, like, so it's a one issue election. Like, I think right now the most important thing is people should be upset that they don't have their lives back, and there's no end game, because the truth is nobody's told you that, like, hey, when we get to this certain amount of cases, we'll be okay to be normal again, or once we have you know, even the whole vaccine thing. Like, even if we have a vaccine, some people say, oh, you know, if there's a vaccine, then we'll open things. It's like, probably not, because one, the virus changes. I mean, we've never eliminated the flu from the face of the earth. What makes you think we're going to eliminate anything else from the face of the earth? It's going to exist. It's always existed. That's why coronavirus is one of the viruses that Lysol kills, and it says on the can. I mean, it's been a part of our environment. It's quite normal to be exposed to viruses and test for stuff. I mean, even the PCR test. I mean, the guy who created the PCR test, there's a video which is impossible to find on YouTube, so coincidentally, but you can find on BitChute, of him talking about how it was not designed to find viruses. I mean, this is the guy who patented the PCR test. I mean, it's a test that we're using. It's magnifying the cell so much that you can find trace amounts of anything, and even if it's insignificant, even if it has no effect on, on your health, it's not going to make you sick. You're asymptomatic. We kept saying, oh, people are asymptomatic because they're super healthy, or they're asymptomatic because this fucking test sucks, giving you a false.
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything. So I mean, it could be all the above. So when this whole lockdown is based on faulty tests, inflamed numbers. I've had Dr. Scott Jensen on. He talked about the new CDC guidelines and all that stuff, and in regards to how they were letting you basically consider a death with the virus and by the virus is the same thing. I mean, Dr. Birx said it at a press conference, and it's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, they talked about it on a press conference. Like, so my point is, like, this issue to me is the most important one. So when Trump is openly saying, like, we need to get back to our lives, we need to get back to opening things up, we need to make sure that I don't know how he words it, but like that the cure isn't as bad as the virus that you're fighting, and Biden is saying, yeah, maybe we have to lock things down again, then that alone should just be the deciding factor. Because if anybody, there's nobody out there, I don't care where your political views lie, there's nobody out there who's fucking enjoying their kids being on Zoom conference calls instead of being at school with their friends, that they're enjoying wearing masks everywhere they go, that they're enjoying the awkwardness of, like, walking down the street and people jumping onto the street because they don't want to walk near you because they're worried that you might get something, or you might give them something, or maybe they're just worried that you might get mad if they get too close to you. Like, nobody is enjoying this. So if you're not enjoying this, and you don't, and the truth is, the people who are pushing this are not telling you when it's going to end and if it's going to end, then to me, you have one fucking choice. Like, the only choice is vote Trump, because God knows that if you vote the other side, things aren't going to get any better. And the thing is, Biden's a fucking puppet. Like, whatever they tell him to do, he'll just do. So it's not like he has any values or morals or anything that he's going to fight for. He doesn't give a shit. So it's like, to me, like, regardless what you think of Trump and so many other aspects, this is a fight about getting our lives back. This is a fight, and I mean, I'm not trying to make this a promotion for Trump, but I'm just really afraid that if the other side wins, like, this might be the norm, and it's never gonna fucking end. And I feel bad for everybody. I mean, regardless what side you're on, I feel bad. I mean, even the Black Lives Matter riots, and I call them riots because I think when you're burning shit and you're blowing things up, it's a riot. It's not a protest. But to me, like, I feel bad for them, because I think some of that built up anxiety was because of the fucking lockdown. The isolation, the anxiety, the depression, the unhappiness, the uncertainty of the future, like, all those emotions, just, it was a cocktail waiting to explode. And that's what happened, that when they got out. I mean, how many of them were probably just happy that they could see their friends again? Like, hey, we're out in the streets, we're protesting, but at least I get to see my friends now. I have a reason to get out of the house, and nobody's getting mad at me for hanging out with my friends. So it works me up.
It works me up too, especially the hypocrisy when it comes to them telling us to social distance or wear a mask. But if you're outside protesting or rioting, then you don't have to wear a mask. There's no super spreaders at a riot. They're only going to end up at Trump rallies. But you're totally right. There will be no end to this. The war on coronavirus is the new war on terror. Okay, do you remember terror alerts when they would say we're at a terror alert orange today? It's all designed to keep you afraid and make you stay home so that you don't go out. Well, the pandemic is the perfect reason to keep you scared and keep you in your home and stop you from interacting with people and give the country a collective case of PTSD. Nobody knows when it's going to end. many people still think that they're going to get sick. They're worried that their grandparents are going to die or their parents are going to die. They're worried about going out and touching things. I remember being a kid and getting told to, if somebody had chicken pox, you go play with somebody who has chicken pox. So then you get the chicken pox and then you get it over with and then you move on. You don't constantly use hand sanitizer every time you touch a surface. You're not running around with Lysol and disinfecting every surface in your house. It's ridiculous. And there will be no end to it. Joe Biden, this will become the new normal under whether it's Joe Biden or any other Democrat. I mean, this is what they're pushing for. They want to keep people scared. They want to keep them in their homes. They want to keep them isolated. And I think that they're well aware of that social disconnection that we're all having. It is really unsettling when you look at somebody out on the street, you make eye contact and you can't tell if they're going to stab you or if they're smiling at you. We're missing so many social cues and not to mention the anxiety that it gives you wearing a mask all the time. You're not able to breathe. Even if you're wearing a mask, if the virus is real, you're fucked, okay? Because the virus is going to go right through that mask unless you're wearing an N95 in a pressurized suit, with like full head to toe, hazmat garb. It doesn't matter, okay? And it's clearly not anywhere near what they said it was. I don't know a single person who's died from coronavirus, okay? I've heard lots of stories. I've heard about old people, but I also know that we have like 0 recorded cases of influenza since this all started. There's also been a dip to 0 in cases of pneumonia. I mean, you think about it, it's because they're counting everything as coronavirus. It doesn't matter if you died of a heart attack or you died in a car accident. This is another big boon for the life insurance companies too, because they don't pay out in the case of a pandemic. If you've got life insurance, you've paid your entire life, and the doctor puts down that you had coronavirus, even though you died in a car accident or you fell off a building or you had, diabetes and your blood sugar was high or something, then, you're going to be listed as dying of coronavirus. And then your life insurance isn't going to pay out. And then they get to keep all that money and they get to fuck you. Yes, that is 100% true. Yes, I know somebody that it happened to, more than one person that it happened to.
Well, what a surprise. A lot of people are getting rich through all this. I mean, think about it. We're all struggling. I mean, you know what really fucking pisses me off? These fines for not wearing a mask. Like, people don't have jobs. Businesses are closing. People are full of anxiety and depression. And you want to give not like a $50 fine. I'm hearing like $500 fines, $1,000 fine. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, of all times now, you're going to give a $500 fine when that person probably doesn't even have a fucking job? Are you kidding? It's just, what does that tell you? It's all about control. It's all, and you made a really good point in regards to that code red, code orange bullshit during 9/11, because I remember that very well. And I'm just like, nothing ever happened, but they just kept scaring you. Same thing with the anthrax thing, like anthrax. Oh my God, you're male. Be afraid. You need us. We will help you. Just put your trust in us. Just do what we tell you, and you'll be fine. You'll be safe. And it's the same thing now. Like, they keep scaring us. I literally Monday night, I was going to a cigar dinner event, and right before I got there, my phone vibrated, and there was some alert system where everybody in Massachusetts got this alert system, and in the alert system it said that, like, Springfield is I live in Ludlow, Massachusetts, which is outside of Springfield, but they're like, oh, it's a hot spot now, and during Thanksgiving and the holidays, don't get together with your friends and family. I mean, it literally said that in an alert. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're telling people not to get her. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, and the worst part, right, is that there's actually people who agree with us that but yet the tactics that they've used have worked. Because I know people who are like, listen, I hate Biden, but I feel like if I vote for Trump, this fight to take him down is never going to end. So I need to vote for Biden. So it's like, it's almost worked in regards to like creating such chaos in the world that even people who don't want to vote for Biden, they'll vote for him just because they feel like it might help with this all ending.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. I think that there are definitely people out there who are feeling that way, but I think that just looking at the level of enthusiasm that President Trump has. I mean, take a look at a Biden rally, and you've got maybe 6 to 10 people all social distancing, and he's speaking with a bullhorn, and there's an 85-inch LCD screen telling him what to say. And then you look at a Trump rally and you've got tens of thousands of people all of them lining up for miles and miles and miles, just waiting to get in there and see him for, you know, a half hour to an hour, however long the rally lasts. And I think that there are way more people like that than there are people who are just afraid that this is never going to end. You know, I understand why people would feel that way. It's mentally exhausting having to go through this every single day, having to wake up and, you know, wonder, oh God, you know, what new fake news story are they going to put out today? You know, I think that the media has completely discredited themselves throughout this entire thing. They've shown that, you know, there's no such thing as real journalists anymore. You know, I mean, we're the closest thing there is to real journalists. I mean, at least we'll tell you how we feel about things, and we don't try to sugarcoat it or pretend that we're, you know, that we're abstaining from taking any position when, in fact, you know, we're blatantly telling you to do one thing or the other. These people are, the legacy media is dying. And I think that the legacy establishment is dying too. And if anybody is listening and you're thinking about not voting for Trump because you want this to end, I implore you, vote for Trump so this will end.
Yeah, I hear. I mean, and the other thing too, I think Joe Rogan's having a huge impact on what's going on because I mean, for him to have, you know, his first episode on Spotify was he had Adam Curry on from the No Agenda show, which I love, and has been doing a great job reporting on all this. He just had Alex Jones on with Tim Dillon, and it's like, listen, this is not pro Biden conversations. I mean, this is very much, you know, stuff that's gonna sway people in the other direction. And he's become much more open about his skepticism of the coronavirus and all the stuff. So I think, you know, maybe he was right, maybe, or at least some people that I know that are close to him, like Sam Tripoli and others, where I had discussions with them. They believe that once he went to Spotify, you know, and he kind of was like, okay, let me milk this YouTube cow while I can. I won't get kicked off because I'm doing good business here. But the second I have the freedom to go to Spotify and my stuff's on there, then fuck them. And that's what it seems like has happened, because now he's much more open to having these people on, and he has a huge influence on a huge amount of people. So even people who are down, or like, you know, kind of don't know where they stand quite yet, you know, he might be the deciding factor. I mean, even Kanye West, who I'm not a fan of by any stretch of imagination, but he was saying stuff that I'm like, yeah, I'm like, he kind of, you know, he seems like he's, you know, he kind of knows what's going on in regards to the fact that there are people pulling the strings and there's much more to the story. You know, obviously his arrogance and whatnot, and him sounding like he's a second coming of Jesus is bothersome. But, you know, the fact that he's at least waking up some portion of the population to some of these things. You know, he talked about fluoride and the pineal gland. I'm like, but you know, these are things that if anybody else said, you're like, oh, that must be a Alex Jones, you know, fan who's saying this. So the fact that he's saying it, people might, you know, even though he's not the most credible people, he does have a huge influence and might open people up to some of these other topics and subjects. So, yeah, let's keep doing what we're doing. Where can people? So I know you're on many platforms. Where can people? Where's the best spot? I mean, I'm assuming it's the website, right?
Yeah, the website launches tomorrow. It'll be ready tomorrow morning. RedPill78news.com. So RedPill, the number 7, the number 8, news.com. RedPill78news.com. You can see all of my streams there, all of my video postings. I'll have a blog with announcements. I've got links to a bunch of other people who have been deleted recently as well. And all you have to do is go to that one website and you'll be able to catch up on everything that I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for your time. I really appreciate it. And thanks for doing what you're doing, even though, you know, this stuff will get us in trouble and kicked off YouTube or whatnot. You know, I think, like you said, at least when people listen to us talk, we sound like just people who aren't trying to sell anything. They're not trying to push any agenda. We're just sincere people, just sharing ideas and how we feel about things. And I think that's why people are really connected with your channel. And I mean, you were killing it on YouTube. You had a huge following, and hopefully you can rebuild a lot of that again. Hopefully with my podcast and you know, other people can let people know, because like you said, I think that's a big part of it. Like you said earlier in the conversation, like they don't realize you're missing quite yet, and then they realize you're missing, and then they're like, okay, where do I find them? So hopefully we get this word out that it's like, get to his website, you know, and check him out there. And hopefully I see you on the next Union of the Unwanted, Monday, the second before the election, which should be interesting. I'm sure a lot's going to happen from now till then. But
I'll be there. I'll be there. And thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate you inviting me on. Big respect for your work. And, I think in the end, this is going to be positive because in the same way that people are seeing Joe Rogan getting censored now over on Spotify, people seeing myself and all of these other channels getting censored on YouTube, it's going to cause people to move away from these legacy platforms. And it's going to give us the opportunity to create a space, someplace else, someplace that isn't going to be afraid to allow us to have an open dialogue and get together and have a conversation.
Yeah, and look into Rockfin. It might be a interesting company to work with. Like I said, I got to talk to some of them, and they're super nice. And if they're true to their word, which they seem to be, because they seem to be able or willing to take on a lot of people who are controversial, then I think it's a good alternative, and it's a good platform to kind of help promote a little bit. And but thanks again, Zach. I don't want to take much more of your time, and I'm sure if I don't talk to you prior, I'll see you Monday the 2nd.
I'll be there. Send the invite.
I will, absolutely. Thanks, Zach. Take care.
All right. Peace, brother.